tonight, Twitch and landmark permitting, we are going to be looking at flat voxel inlay shapes. This requires looking at some offset voxels, which is a little more than beginner level. So if you haven't watched any previous tutorials, I would highly recommend you watch some others first. But if you're fairly comfortable with the previous material I've covered in my tutorials, this should not be too scary. Hopefully. Knock on wood. So, first we need to make an offset voxel. There are several ways to do this. There's no one right way to do most things in Landmark, so whatever works for you, use it, but this is one of the easier ways that I have found. First, I'm taking a square add tool to voxel size brush. So I'm stacking 2 of those high, so this is now 4 voxels high in total and 2 wide on each side. That doesn't particularly matter. Now I'm switching to the line tool. Basically what I want to do is with the brush 2 voxels wide, I want to make a line that starts at the top, as you can see here, and then immediately adjoining the bottom down there. So it is 2 high and 1 across. I only need to do that on one side, but I'm actually going to do it on 2 sides just to illustrate something you're going to need to watch out for. Now I'm just going to select a different color. Okay, how about obsidian? Use my paint tool, shrink my brush back down to 1 voxel size, and I'm going to paint up here. Now you'll notice that what has happened is my line tool has created a kind of wedge shape, which is actually 2 voxels in height, but only 1 across. Now the one thing I'm going to call out to be careful of is that if you had done this on a different side than I did, sometimes you will not get that clean shape. You might get an angle like that, or like that. You don't want those. I mean, I'm sure you can use them for other things, but they're not what we need today. You want to pick the side that does it straight like this. And if you got this result, the first side you try, just draw another line on a different side till you get this one. I find the side facing north, north-south, will give you that result, but you don't have to remember that, just keep trying until you get that shape. So now I'm going to copy this shape. Got that on my clipboard. And I'm going to use that to deform some other voxels. So I'm just going to stack a couple of voxels high here, and I'll alternate colors just so we can tell them apart. So we can see these are each a different voxel where it changes color. Now I'm hitting paste, and this is my little wedge-shaped voxel that I created before. I'm actually, just for convenience, going to flip this upside down. I don't have to. I could flip what I'm going to change upside down later, but I'm going to do this from the start. And I'm going to use my tweak mode to just align it with these 2 in the middle right here. Remember, tweak mode, just hold down the control key when you left click, brings up this little menu. And I'm going to confirm. Doesn't matter what you've got ticked here at this point. Now you can see what happened when I pasted that. What happened is it changed the shape of the voxels beside it. I realize that's not entirely clear because I happen to use the same color as I had the one that I copied, so let me repaint those. Okay, now we can clearly see which is an individual voxel. So by pasting the black one, I stretched the red one because its side has to match its neighbor's side, and Landmark will always keep the shape of the most recently pasted voxel, which is this wedge. Therefore, its neighbor here, which shares an entire side with it, had to get stretched so that it aligns with it. Now, copy that wedge again and rotate it onto this side. Same thing happens. And you notice that the white voxel that was here has now been squished so flat that you can't even actually see it down there. It's so small that we would have to be super, super close to actually see it. So what I've got here and here are still 2 voxels, but visibly the game thinks that one of them looks 2 voxels high and one of them is so paper thin it's almost not visible. You can see this more clearly if we copy these out separately. So I'm going to select that, copy, and paste. So here's voxel 1. And then I'm going to select the voxel below, copy, paste, and there's voxel. Oops, pasted it too close side by side. There's voxel 2. So see what happened? We have one paper thin one and one that's too high, 2 voxels high. The game thinks it's here, but visually it appears to be both voxels. So, copying the fat too high one, oops, failed to copy, Control C, copy, Control V, paste. If I start stacking these up like this, and then I paint alternate voxels, you can see what happened when I painted that central square. Let me undo that and do it again. So my cursor is on this middle voxel, click, and it's actually the bottom one that's painted. That's because it thinks this top one, which was the most recently pasted one, is 2 voxels high, and when I pasted it, I forced the one that I'd originally placed there to be squished downwards because those sides always have to be connected. Now I have a voxel that is actually here, but appears to be here and one below it, and I have a voxel that's actually here, but appears to be entirely one below it. And you'll notice if I select the center square, copy and paste, this is what I actually get. It looks like a normal voxel, but when I try and select it, you'll see that my cursor snaps to above it. That's where the game really thinks it is. It thinks it's really above it. So this has a number of interesting effects, and there are many tutorials that could be done on this, and I'll do some others in the future as well. But for the purposes of this tutorial, what we can now do is use this shape to make a curvy inlay shape just the way you can do with normal voxels. So for example, I will just paste this as if it was a normal voxel, and I'll make whatever shape I want, which I'm going to smooth just like I would with normal voxels be able to. And the only trick here is that if you go back and you try and select these voxels, you would notice that your cursor still floats on top of them. You can't actually select that one below, even though visually it looks like it's there. As far as the game is concerned, it's up here. So now I've made an E shape, the letter E, excuse me, and I will now select that. And this is, actually call out one thing first. When you are making the shape, you don't ever want to have just a diagonal connection. Like, you don't want to have like that. That's not going to smooth well, and that's true of normal voxels as well as these offset ones. If you smooth this, weird things would happen. It would get a big gap in the middle, and we want one solid shape. So just make sure you have actual connections between full sides when you do this. All right, so now I'm going to select the shape that I made, and this is slightly difficult because you have to remember to select the air above where it apparently is. Hopefully you can see that. So I've actually selected what looks like I'm selecting above that voxel, because that's where the game actually thinks it is. So copying that, and if I paste, you'll see I do in fact get that shape. And I had actually done this earlier, so I've got one here already, but I'm just going to stack, oops, just going to stack this up several high, and I could do this in tweak mode or just freehand, depending which I prefer. I'm probably going to do this, I don't know, 6 or 7 should be plenty, like that. And this is still, even though it's stacked up, each voxel is really one below where it visually looks to us as if it is. So now I'm going to select, just like I would with normal voxels, I'm going to select the middle section. Doesn't matter if I get a little air around the sides. But I'm not going to select the very top and very bottom voxel. I'm going to hit smooth a couple times, my smooth tool. How many times you do this is up to you entirely, how smooth you want your shape to be. But what is important is you should remember how many times you do it. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. Now what do I have over here? Over here I have the exact same shape, but in just normal voxels. These are normal voxels. You see I highlight them. If I use the delete tool, I delete them. Just normal add tool voxels. But I made the same E shape that I made previously. And I'm going to copy, paste, again, stack them up a few high, and then do the exact same thing. I'm going to select the middle section and smooth, and this is the important part, smooth the exact same number of times. So 1, 2, 3. Great. So now let's copy out just the middle row of this, or a middle row, and I'm going to paste it here. So there's my nice curvy E. I could go back and smooth that a little more if I'm not happy with that, but looks fine to me for the purposes of the demonstration. And then I'm also going to select a middle row of this one, which is the offset. And although I've got this selection tool here, the actual row of voxels visually that I'm selecting is below it because this is the offset. Now I paste this. I want to paste it on top of this normal voxel shape, but remember that where the paste preview actually is what you visually see. That's where visually the game has drawn the voxels. The actual voxel position is one above that. So if I do this, even though it looks as if I am pasting the voxel on exactly on the top as far as the game is concerned, the voxels I'm pasting are actually sitting on top of that E. It's just that visually the voxels I'm pasting are essentially on top of that E. That wasn't very clear, but hopefully when I click, you'll see what happens. I click, it kind of looked like I just replaced what was pasted underneath, but I didn't really, because if I select that layer there and paste it, this is what I get. See that? Paper thin E shape. It's really, underneath here, it's really sitting completely flat against the dirt. It's a little hard to see because of the color of the dirt, so there we go. Just painted the background so you can see it a little more clearly. Paper thin. Now, we could have used this flat voxel, which we also created when we made this, to make a whole sheet of just plain flat voxels, which we did in a previous tutorial. And I'll just do this fairly quickly. And these behave the same way. You see I appear to be selecting right above, but I'm actually visually, the voxels appear to be below where my selection is. These are a little hard to work with because they're a little hard to visualize. All right, I'm gonna use tweak mode because that's a little easier. So tweak, and then I can just align them like this. And now I can copy these, paste these. And I will paint these with a nice red cloth just so they're a little easier to see. Now I'm going to copy my flat E, copy that, paste it in here, oops, without air. And there we go. I didn't quite make this wide enough, but you can see rotate that to fit it in. There we go. Now I have a completely flat piece of cloth with my pattern in it. Apparently I've run out of smelted copper. Wonderful. Let me just delete this quick, because apparently I have not been smelting much copper. Alright, there's some copper back. I didn't realize I was using copper. I thought it was gold. Alright, so paste. So, somehow got a weirdness of copying there, but you can see completely flat. A couple little artifacts actually there. Might need to recopy that. But yeah, basically that is the way you would make something like a banner that you would hang on a wall. Guess I don't want my E sideways. There we go. I can make a nice little wall banner. You can make a carpet with a nice little inlaid pattern, or flag, stuff like that. And you can use a combination of that and techniques like the line tool to get some interesting shapes. You don't have to use the inlay technique at all to make different shapes of flat voxels, but it's what's going to allow you to make the curves. So if I use the line tool, which we showed briefly in the previous tutorial, use the line tool. And hit F to switch to delete mode. I can also get angles like that, which give me other shapes I can use. Question is, can I circle delete that? I'm not sure. It may depend on the circle size. Looks like in this case it worked pretty well. I suspect you're going to get, yeah, there's a little bit of puffiness there. I think it's probably going to depend a bit on the size of your circle, but I'm sure if you play around with it a bit, you'll probably be able to get what you want. And of course, remember that anytime you have a shape, you can also make a negative of that shape. Oops, that's not right. So here is my flat voxels. Got a little weirdness happening in the side there, but for purposes of the demo, I will ignore that. So having this cutout circle shape here, I could presumably use this as a remove voxel and actually get the negative shape there. You can see how that cut it out. And if I'd copied more air around it or more material around it, I would have a fully floating circle. So there you go. Hopefully that was clear. It is, like I said, a bit of an advanced technique, but that's the way people can make custom rugs, placemats, table runners, banners, flags, with all sorts of different patterns on them.